Hi everyone, welcome to today's talk time. We have an exciting guest, and this is a person who I guess is very, very active in the idea of people making wishes. And so if you're intrigued, this could be an interesting talk time to tune into. Her name is Brownell Landrum, and she's an author of many books. She's also the founder and creator of Cosmic Wish Experiments. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Hope you enjoy this one. Please buckle up. Welcome to today's talk time, Brownell. I am quite curious about what you've done, because you're the founder of the creator of Cosmic Wish Experiment, and I think it's quite an intriguing journey that you've been on. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks. I always like to make sure people know that, like, I'm a storyteller that got interested in the science, as opposed to I'm not a scientist. So if there are people, listening or watching and they're like, okay, she's not a scientist, who is she to tell us? It's like, I just got really, really curious about science. So I have written like over a dozen books. And my first book was a nonfiction book. And then I got into fiction and wrote all these metaphysical books that you might find interesting, because I know you do past life regressions too, right?
Yeah, from time to time, people come in for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and my novels are kind of get into a reincarnation love story where they go through multiple lifetimes and all this kind of stuff. So, and my most recent trilogy I came out with about a year and a half ago is like this epic reincarnation mystery and love story about a famous couple from history who's reincarnated today to fulfill a prophecy that'll change the world. So I write these kind of fanciful books generally, and then I was writing my most recent novel that's semi-autobiographical, and it's written in 4 parts. And the 4th part is I started writing, and it's all written from the point of view of what I call the upstairs. So you've got these like guides running around up here, and then we're down here doing all our crazy stuff. And so it's written from their point of view. And the 4th one is written about this magical world of wishes. So I started looking into the whole concept of wishes and wishing. And then one night I couldn't sleep. And so I was listening to a science lecture, because that's kind of a weird thing that I do. I listen to science in the middle of the night. And then it made me start wondering, like, is there science in wishing? And so that led me to this huge adventure where I researched over 70 scientists, and I came out with this book, The Art and Science of Wishing. So my little shameless plug there. And it just was so fascinating to see, like, every time you make a wish, you engage over a dozen different sciences. And so that's kind of how I got into this journey.
A lot of people don't realize how intention plays a big part in what we manifest. And I think if we think about the idea of wishing, it's really getting clear about something, isn't it?
There's so many aspects to it. Yes. And what I like, I mean, one of the things I describe, in fact, I just did a TEDx talk this week. So I'm like, hyped up on having accomplished that big wish. But one of the things I describe is the difference between a wish, a prayer, and a goal, right? And to understand those differences, because I think that's really important. And so, and in my definition, people can argue, and I like debate, so that's fine. But, a goal is something generally in your control. You can set a plan, you can make it happen. You say, I'm going to have this goal, I'm going to take this vacation or run a marathon or whatever, and you can set the goal. And then a prayer is usually something outside of your control. So you're asking for help from a source or energy or force outside your control. And then wishes are kind of this beautiful combination of both. And so when you're talking about the fact that wishes relate to intention, and how all it connects, it's kind of like on all those levels, right? Because a goal starts with intention on a certain level, and then a prayer does too. But a wishes, kind of in a way bring these things together. And then I always talk about the difference between a wish and a cosmic wish. And then basically, in my vernacular, a cosmic wish is when you add science to your wish. So you start understanding the science. So when you look at something like the idea of intention, you can say, oh, wait a minute, what is the science there? So it's not a loose concept, but it's a very clear way to do it, way to make something happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm wondering about the collective, like having more people come together with the same wish.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, let's kind of explore that a bit. What are your, I guess, findings or understandings around that collective energy versus one person making a wish all by themselves?
Yeah, well, and that's well, first, one of the things that was fun to find in the whole concept of wishing and researching wishing, one of the sciences that I loved was anthropology. And that when you look at anthropology, there are a bunch of things that come out. One is how important it is to have a ritual. Mm-hmm. And that ritual is a reminder to repeat your wish. And it's also kind of a reminder, like if you're wishing together, oh, we're all using this same ritual, we're all looking at the same time on the clock, or, with the same kind of vibe, so that when you're wishing with other people, you're wishing, that ritual is the thing that ties it together. And the other thing that's really important from anthropology standpoint is collective wishing rituals have been a key driver of survival since the dawn of humanity. I mean, people getting together and making wishes together is what got them through. Okay, we wish for, a plentiful crop or a rain or whatever, right? And I think we've lost that. I think we've lost this power of being able to wish together. And so kind of my idea, and of course, you're in New Zealand and I'm in the United States, and please forgive us for what this country is doing right now. But we're in this low level energy, right? And so the whole idea is like, if we can raise our energy to a higher level by having a wish together. And so, I like to look at it as like, well, Joan of Arc had a vision, right? And Gandhi had a mantra. Martin Luther King had a dream. We need this kind of collective vision that we're all focusing in the same direction. So that's the sociological and anthropology reasons for this. And then there are other things, like things called mirror neurons. So if I'm telling a story and then you're resonating, or you're telling me your wish and I'm connecting to that and I join that, the multiplier effect is really, really interesting. And I can't remember the numbers, so forgive me. There's a lot of data to roll around in this brain sometimes. But it's not just 1 + 1 = 2. It's like you start multiplying more out the more you add people to that energy. And I'm sure you know about like some of the intention experiments and some of the things with, the Maharishi and the 1% solution for people meditating. And, from the science standpoint, they might call that frontier, right? Because we're still trying to figure that out. But there are some things about things like mirror neurons when we're connecting, and the power of storytelling, because you tell a story and then people get behind that story and then they're in on it. So like when Martin Luther King is saying, we have this dream and look at this future and we could all get there together, everybody's like, we're getting there. We all see it. And I want to join that bandwagon. And so that's why I started the Cosmic Wish Experiment as a way to allow people that have a wish to bring people in on their wish, and then to go through a scientific protocol to manifest that wish, to bring that wish to life. And there are other dimensions to it, like what are the 4 responses to a wish, and are we aligned? Whether you call it mind, body, spirit, or conscious, subconscious, superconscious, or whichever, language, but you got to be aligned on, and is it at the best, is it something you need versus something you want? All those factors pull in. So you go through the science and you start adding like, okay, now let's rethink this. Is it a want versus a need? Or how can we make this wish more fun? Because that's going to get our subconscious more excited about the wish. So there's all these little fun things that you can add that make the wish stronger. Does that all make sense? I mean, are you tracking, or tell me what you think?
Yeah. For me, I can remember a very powerful experience I had many years ago, and it was called Fire Up the Grid, and it was a collective worldwide meditation to bring in the new energy and for collective positivity and peace and love and that sort of thing. And we gathered in a space here in Wellington, and there were so many people in the room, we had to do 2 circles. So an inner circle and an outer circle, because there just wasn't enough room. And I can remember I was in the inner circle, and the energy, it was like coming in waves. And all around the world at the same time, we were to listen to a guided meditation. So simultaneously, there were spots, you know, at the same time to begin to end and in the same focus. So for your, I guess, journey in creating this Make-A-Wish, you know, that idea, is that similar or quite different completely?
Oh, it all kind of feeds together. I think the thing that makes, so, you know, it's like, some of it is a rewording, you know, and some of it is just like, okay, it's that might have been this might be this, right? It might be a little bit bigger, but a little bit of a head shift. It is setting a story or a vision, right? Because there's a whole chapter in my book about the science of storytelling, and that we all have a vision. So, when you're talking about what you're, you know, meditating on as far as peace and all that stuff, it's, I also talk about what's important is, I call it the 3 Ps. The wish has to be peaceful, positive, and purposeful. And so by peaceful means not only what you're wishing for is peaceful, but also your polyvagal system, your biological system is peaceful when you're making the wish. And what you're doing right there is you're changing your whole body to that energy, right? And then positive, are you wishing for something and not against something else? Because sometimes people get together and like, well, we wish against, like, you know, protesting this issue or this issue. And that's not moving you forward, right? We want to wish forward to something positive and have a positive, you know, mindset. And then, is it something purposeful, right? Is it something that benefits multiple people? I wrote a children's book this year that gets into that. And the purposeful one, I have a before and after picture of, like, before you add the science, right? And on the purposeful one, there's a little boy, and he's standing in front of a mirror, and he's got a towel around his neck, and he says, and he's looking in the mirror, and he says, I wish to be a superhero. And he sees his reflection. And then afterwards, when you make the wish more purposeful, he says, I wish to be a superhero so I can help people. And then all of a sudden, in the reflection are all these people there ready to help him, and that he's ready to help. And so part of the thing that you're talking about, and it works exactly with what you're talking about, this is not in conflict with it, it just adds a sort of a little bit of a scientific definition, is that when you're clear about that wish and everybody's in alignment, then what's happening and you repeat the wish, because you need to repeat it daily to activate neuroplasticity, right? That's the science of neuroplasticity, is once you've implanted in your brain, you're going to be repeating it. Then your brain triggers what's called the reticular activating system, which looks for the solution to that. So it's lovely to do it once. If you really want change, you've got to bring the science in, and the science is to repeat the wish. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. If we think about the habit of being yourself, and wanting to break away or shift your way of turning up, or the way that you react to something, I think what you're talking about assists that realignment, if you like. Yeah. Yes.
And then there's the whole component. And I know, you know, as a hypnotherapist, you know, we haven't talked about your practice, but and what you teach people. But I'm assuming it goes through this kind of alignment as well, is, you know, as I mentioned, the mind, body, spirit, and the 3 selves, because all 3 selves have to be aligned on that wish. Right. So if you're, you know, let's say your spirit, you know, higher self, whatever term you want to use, that wants you to do this wish because it's important for your soul lesson or your growth or your path or whatever. And that's good. But what if the body is not in alignment? And so the body is the subconscious, right? So how do you dig into that to find out how he or she or they can kind of get within that whole vibe? Because if not, you know, my first book is called 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. And one of the reasons is subconscious sabotage. When your body is, you know, like, you may want to do this and you may want to force yourself to do it, but your body's like, no, 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 I'm not doing that. And, I describe your body as like a puppy. And that imagine you're walking your dog and the dog runs off. What most people do is either yell at the dog or chase the dog. But what if instead you go, hey, it's fun over here, let's go this way. And the dog's going to go, yay, we'll go over here, right? And your body will do the same thing when you're excited about your wish, when your wish is something that makes you elevated and makes you excited. So that's such an important component that I don't think people always pull into that. Like, yes, we're feeling peaceful and let's have fun with it. Like, how can we make it fun? Because then the body is going to go, I'm with you. Let's make it. I'm not going to sabotage that because I'm getting what I need out of it. Does any of that resonate or make sense?
Yeah. I'm just curious about, I guess, the vision that you have for people in the way of the Cosmic Wish experiment. Is it inviting people to come together as a group? Is it working on people in their own individual way? What's the, I guess, how does it all work?
Yeah. Well, the website is cosmicwishexperiment.com. So if anybody wants to join, it's simple and fun and free. Okay. So I just want to make sure it's my way of trying to, if we're down in this lower level energy on this planet, how can we get up here? And so it was my way of saying, how can we take what I've learned and get there? And it's completely free. If people want to buy my book, great. I mean, I love that, but that's optional. And so, for example, if you wanted to start a wish circle, then you would go in there and say, I'm starting a wish circle. I'm naming it something. You have to have a name so people know what to look for when they're signing up. And you decide on what your wish is. And it will be screened to make sure the wishes are peaceful, positive, and purposeful, right? If somebody's wishing for the demise of something, that's not going to work, right? That's not what we're trying to do here. But then you invite people to join your wish circle. And that it does require, because of the science, it does require a commitment of, I'm going, and you'll come up with whatever ritual it is every day. That's something that's going to remind you. And then, like for one group I have, every time you see a mirror, they're going to make their wish, right? And it ties into something that means something to them. And so for 8 weeks, you have to commit to making that wish for like 1 minute a day. And then there's weekly activities that go in with it too, and training and all that, all that stuff is all built in. And it's all designed to be fun, right? That's it won't work if it's not fun.
So what I'm hearing then, it's not that everyone has to clock in exactly the same time. It's just that it's a shared intention or wish that people are tuning into when they can throughout that day for a period of time together, but in their own sort of time and space. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it different people can run it different ways, right? I've set up the framework to do it. I mean, there's a tracking system where you can put in your, track how did you feel when you made this wish, and did you make the wish, and get points and prizes and, all that kind of fun and game stuff. But, some people are running it, and they have a Facebook group or another group, and they're having people share their stories because, let's just say you're wishing for world peace. It's more fun if everybody's sharing what they're doing and what they learned and what did they notice that day that's going to help them on that path. And, oh, wow, all of a sudden I brought my kids in, and the kids are doing this project at school that, to send letters to support to Ukraine or, whatever it is. So the more you engage with the other people in your wish circle, the better, right? Because they want to feel part of a community instead of just, oh, I'm alone and I'm wishing for this. So if you have a social media or a newsletter or a group or something, it's definitely more powerful, right? Because then they have some way to feel part of something. But that's not, I'm not monitoring that. That's not a requirement. It's just a way to make it stronger. And it could be more scientific. I guess that's the irony, right? I'm talking about the science, to track it and to measure it. And, there's a tracking as far as people going in and answering it. But it's got to feel good, right? And so whatever works for different people is fine.
For those that are new to this concept, because there will be some people maybe tuning in and going, what is this?
Yeah, what's she talking about?
Years ago, I remember Lynn McTaggart.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Especially the field book. Yeah, that was mine.
that kind of opened my eyes, because she ran an experiment with some physicists, or anyway, around sending meditation to an area that had a very high crime rate. I don't know if you recall this experiment. And during the period that they were doing the meditation and aiming it towards that zone, there was a decrease or a decline, a very irrelevant,
Yes.
statistically relevant decline in crime over that period of time that they were sending that intention for peace and so on. So I think humanity has often forgotten how important the thoughts that we harvest and grow really are. And if we can get the understanding of cleaning up our language, so instead of getting stuck in the "I hope I don't," or "this always seems to happen because," and we're reinforcing that negative dialogue, if we can be mindful of what it is that we're saying in the way of our intention story or our belief story, that has power, and it's contagious. Just like if someone's in a bad mood, it's a bit contagious. People can kind of feel a little bit around that person.
And I think I know David Hawkins. Do you know his research, the power versus force, right? I mean, there is, he quantified these measurements of these energies. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
So, for those that kind of are just beginning their journey with this awakening of realization that, hang on, thoughts are powerful, and our idea, like you're talking about as a wish, there is that collective prayer, and there is ceremony, there is people coming together, and that has happened historically for as long as people have been around, probably.
That's right. Those rituals were what kept us going, right? And one of the stories that I tell is, like, can you imagine a world where we didn't have that, where we had no wishing? I mean, hope isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline, and if people stop wishing, what happens is it actually leads to paralysis, apathy, and what they call learned helplessness. I mean, it's important. Whatever word you want to use. I like wish because it doesn't have a lot of history with it in terms of anything negative. People might think it's superficial in a way, but when there's so much science, it kind of solidifies that. And the word itself is just a beautiful word, like wish, it's just this just incredible word. So the only really difference that, there's a lot of differences, I'm sure. She was a science reporter, if I remember correctly, she knew her science. Yeah. And I would love for people like that to get involved in this and actually say, I'm a university and we're going to put some numbers behind this and prove this thing that Brownell created, that, but is that I'm adding the science, saying you repeating it is so important, because that reticular activating system part of our brain, it's like, have you ever thought about buying a certain model of car and then you see it everywhere, right? And like I was dealing with an issue, and I was like, all of a sudden I'm starting to connect with my body. I'm saying what's going on, and then boom, 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 all these answers came to me. And that's our brain. I mean, we can say it, I call it cosmic collaboration, where there's an outside source, wherever you might, consider that. You can answer that with quantum physics or religion, doesn't matter to me, right? And that's what I love about this, really, is it can pull everybody together. You can be total skeptic and still know the science is solid, right? But is the repeating of it, because that's going to look for the solution. So it's going to be more than just that energy, but like, we're going to work on this. Like, I've got somebody doing a wish circle for making the world a better place for animals and bringing kids into that. Well, think of the ideas kids can come up with. So, but it is, and that's where they're repeating it, because neuroplasticity says you have to repeat it every day for at least several weeks, and 8 weeks is the most solid research. So I'm just kind of making it a little more fun, maybe, and also just adding it so that we can pull it together and show results based on what are we doing from it, not just on an energy level, but like, oh, we can take action. Well, all of a sudden, what if 1,000 kids write a letter to Putin saying, please withdraw from Ukraine. I mean, who knows what kind of things could happen, right? And then what ideas people are going to come up with that could be the breakthroughs that we need. So that's kind of all I'm really adding to it. Is just that I found all these cool science stuff that said, oh, we can do this and it'll make it better. And this, so.
I think too, we forget that we're all connected. And if we lose hope, it's not a good energy to be sitting in. And I think when people allow themselves to even wish something, they spark hope in their energy. And that collective hope, when people build and scaffold from each other, that changes societies, that changes the way we turn up. It's like a fashion trend, if you like. So it's a mind shift trend.
That's
so
right.
Okay, we used to think about it like this in the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, but now, we look at the world in this way. And through stories, again, that oral tradition of passing on understanding and wisdom that's layered within stories, that helps the next generation seed that understanding of hope or even a wish, because many stories have wishes involved, don't they?
Well, and we'd be surprised how often we use that word without even thinking about it. Like, I wish this would. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. There's more power in that if you really want to, and also like making sure you're not wishing for something negative or wishing against what you really want, right? Like on the same children's book, I have a before and after for the positive one. And it's kind of my favorite image in there is before there's a kind of a preteen girl and she's got her computer and books in front of her and she's studying and her little sister's trying to get her attention. And she said, I wish my little sister would leave me alone. I'm too busy. Mm. And then we add the science of positive and all the things that go along with the positive. And then the after picture is her playing with her little sister. And she said, I wish I had more time for my sister. And then she finds time because she'll wish for something that will be there. Right. And that's really where we are. Like, okay, if I wish for more time or I wish for, whatever it is, the power that we have, like you said, individually is amazing. In a moment in a group is amazing. Now we just multiply that and add some stories and make it fun and get to know some cool people around the world, hopefully.
What popped into my mind is the idea of oncologists observing the patient coming in and knowing already whether that person's going to be all right or survive or not because of their state of mind. If people come in and they are all doomy gloomy about their outcome, they're going to manifest that for sure, because their energy, their belief energy, is resonating at that frequency of understanding. Their body is listening to the thoughts they're saying. And if, for example, we can work on our positivity or work on reframing, how we're seeing it. Even if it's challenging, how can we turn this around to make meaning of it that's empowering and useful, rather than seeing it as the biggest awful thing that's ever happened? We can, as humans, I think, build resilience with the way that we frame something, for sure, and that can often support more positive outcomes at the other end.
That's totally right. And there's a whole section in my book about what are the 4 responses to a wish: yes, no, wait, or something better. And sometimes yes isn't always the best answer. So we learn from that. And there's a concept I call reverse optimism, when you can look back and go, oh, well, that happened. That sucked, but that got me to move here and got this to happen. And if that hadn't happened, this, and it's exactly what you're talking about, that resilience. When you think, if you look back and think, that was hard and I got through it and it also took me to a better place, then the next time something happens, you'll have more strength because you'll be able to think, maybe this is guiding me somewhere better. How can I, use my agency, if you want that word, to go that way. So yeah, it's so important to be able to look at it and make sure you're looking at wants versus needs, and for example, you can wish for that Ferrari in your front driveway, but then the next day you get it. And then the next day you're like, the neighbor gets a fancier one. What did that do for you? Is that really, what is it, the wish doing for you? So the reframing is so important, because as you're watching, you might think, okay, I wish for this. And you may be in week 3 of the protocol and go, okay, it's clearly not happening. maybe all you need is a pivot that opens up another opportunity to go, oh, wait a minute, if I hadn't made that wish, it didn't, it guided me over here. And this is actually, okay, I wish for this particular person to be my love of my life. Well, maybe it's just I want somebody with those qualities and more, for example, and so, and that's one of the things I think would be so interesting with what you do for your work is like how, and this is just me spitballing as an idea because I'm not a hypnotherapist, but how can this all be brought into hypnotherapy, right? Taking people through this process and having them access the higher self and the body and the three selves and making sure, all are in alignment. I mean, I think that would be super fun for.
I mean, that's pretty much what we do with people because there's going to be a conflict that might arise from fear, and a part of them isn't buying in. They feel frozen because of a past experience or mindset that's kind of seeded from somewhere. It might not have even have been their own personal experience. It might have been what they were witnessing externally, and it's kind of changed their view of things, or they might believe they're unlucky, for example. Things don't turn out for me. Well, that's a long road, a long life to continue building that concept. If they want to go for gold, maybe their soul wants to have that journey. Who am I to say? But at the end of the day, I've seen people night and day change how they turn up in their perspective. So the fears that were stopping them from getting on the flight, or standing up and talking about what they believe in, or getting out of an abusive relationship, whatever it might be that has been holding them back in some way, is also, and this is really important, not a mistake. It's a learning. It's an opportunity to grow. So a lot of people go, oh, I wish that hadn't have happened to me. Well, actually, you might not have been ready to do whatever you're about to do next if that hadn't have happened, if you hadn't had that experience.
Yes, and if you can take all of that and turn it into a wish, I mean, think of how cool that would be, right? And it's like, okay, instead of I'm afraid of taking this flight, it's like I wish I would be excited and joyful and about taking a trip to such and such, and turn it into like looking forward to this adventure of having a pleasant flight, and then repeating it in the neuroplasticity, like all the mind tricks, the body tricks. I mean, because it's psychobiology too, because when you make your wish fun, then you have this like endorphins and dopamine and oxytocin that feed you to say, I'm going to keep wanting to do this. So it works on so many. That's the thing about these sciences, they all start overlapping and multiply, adding on to each other. But so it's like, let's reframe it as a wish, and then how do we keep working on it? And then your brain is going to find those solutions, and your neuroplasticity. I mean, that's the thing that's the lecture I was listening to when I was doing this, is thinking neuroplasticity. I mean, it basically is retraining your brain to have different thoughts. And you're right, you gotta get to the core. Why did it happen? Because that's the lesson. And then once you got that, like, we don't need that anymore. We can move on.
Something popped into my mind, and it's an old memory, and it's of Fantasy Island. You know that old program?
I do.
But I guess as the audience, the people would come in, for those that haven't seen it, I'm of that generation anyway, we would sit down enthralled about what their wish would be, right? And we go on this journey, and they transform into these different people, and different scenarios are playing out. And inevitably, at the end of it, they all kind of wish they hadn't have done that. It's kind of like a really interesting underpinning story around be careful what you wish for. However, see, a lot of people wish them not to have the life that they have, but they forget about the value that they already have, the currency that is this life that is theirs, as if it's like not good enough. And I think I want to just promote that idea. You are enough, and the world is plentiful. It is generous. It is effervescent and full of life and growth, and it always has been. And so sometimes we forget that. We forget the abundance that is within us and all around us, and tuning into that and trusting that we can be supported, be held. This, I think, would be my wish for humanity, to remember.
Yes. Well, in fact, there's an activity that's in the book and also in the whole Cosmic Wish experiment, and I call it the motivation matrix. But you can imagine, four square, two columns, 2 rows, and you fill in the boxes. And the top column is want, then the next column is don't want, and the first row is have, and the bottom row is don't have. So you fill in the things that you want that you have, and that's what you're talking about. And I even have an activity in this thing that I'm working on, like savoring. Like, it's not just gratitude, it's savoring. Like, I've got a warm, comfortable bed tonight. I am going to relish that and love that and be so thankful for that, right? So those are the things you want that you have, that you want to hold on to and appreciate. And then there's things that you don't want that you have. Those are the things you work on eliminating, right? And then on the bottom row is things you want that you don't have. That's usually what we're wishing for. And then the fourth column and the final one is the things you don't want and don't have. And we don't necessarily give enough appreciation for that too. Like, I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. I don't have to worry about whatever it is. And so that's another kind of level and type of appreciation. And that's one of the activities within this whole program, is to really look at that. So one thing I would love is, I don't know when it's going to come out, but I did a TEDx talk this week. And right now it's a late April, and I don't know when it's going to come out. It could be July, it could be June, it could be October. But if you could look for my YouTube channel and look for my TEDx on talk, that'll be on TED, the TED channel, the TED website. That would be great. I would love it. It says the more people that watch it, the more people can get this message, and then the more people we can hopefully get positive, peaceful, positive, and purposeful wishes.
Nice. Well, Brownell, thank you very much for coming on board and sharing what you've been up to. And it sounds like you're quite a busy lady with all of these books that you've produced. And obviously, you want to make a positive impact on the earth and in humanity. So it's nice work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you want to check out what's going on, I'll have some information in the description below. So thank you again for joining us today on the NZACH Talk Time.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Now, if you're interested to become a clinical hypnotherapist and do the diploma course, I'm based in Wellington, New Zealand, but it's online and it's live sessions every Thursday, New Zealand time from 6:30 to 9:30. And we're about to start another round in May. So if you're interested, check out the website nzach.ac.nz, and I'd love to be your guide. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. It's been wonderful to have these unusual guests coming in and talking about their passion. So please, if you like this, please subscribe and like it so the algorithms can support this sort of thing getting out to people who actually are interested in it. So thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week. Bye.